Welcome to One of the Trenches podcast. I'm Johnny Jones. This is Patrick Kaplan. We're here to break down some college football playoff rankings versus the AP polls and some other recap last week and preview this week. What's up, Patch?
Hey Johnny, good to see you. Week 2 of the college football rankings.
Yeah.
Not much has changed, but I have some bones to start picking there. But before we
start
start,
there.
I want to just give a quick recap. We picked 8 games last week, you and I.
Yes.
You did pretty well, batted 50%, 4 for 8. I had a
Mhm.
tougher day. I went 2 for 8. That brings your yearly total up to 38 for 80. I am 44 for 80.
Slowly catching you.
Yeah, you are. And for reference, if you bet $10 on each game,
Yep.
you would be down $74.20.
Brutal.
That's not that bad.
Not awful.
Here? No.
Yeah.
I'm up $40.40.
Okay.
The Cheesecake Factory picks, we are both tied at 18 points. For
I
reference,
know.
listeners, we pick an underdog. If that team wins, you get the points that they were an underdog for. Johnny had a really easy pick with Duke. I had a biased pick with Texas Tech just because I don't want Colorado to succeed. We are now tied at 18 even. Johnny, are we taking this into bowl season?
Yeah, I think it's only right.
I think we end at the December 20th games, the ones right before Christmas.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think we got it. If we're still going to be recording, we might as well keep picking. You know what I mean?
That's fair. So this week, we have another college football playoff.
Yep.
Chaos is going to ensue very soon with the SEC.
Very soon. And
unlikely. You're right. It's not unlikely we have, is it 5, 10, and 2 teams?
Yeah. No, I've got them right in front of me right now. But if you want to start with some college football playoff rankings versus AP polls, I can kind of start throwing stuff at you and see what you think.
Yeah, let it rip.
Okay, so to start, the first 5 for both polls exactly the same.
Yeah.
We got Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana. And I think that's pretty fair. I think those have been
– You really think there's not a team that kind of stands out to you that's like, I feel like they're getting a lot of hype for no reason?
If I had to pick one, it would be Texas because I really don't think they have a signature win. I think they looked really bad on their loss to Georgia. But I think the other team –
home, too.
At home. But I think the other teams like Oregon by far has looked really great. Ohio State, 1-point loss to Oregon at Oregon. That's really, really impressive. Penn State touchdown loss to Ohio State, number 2.
Are you getting concerned at all, Johnny, that like both Penn State and Indiana might get disrespected? I think they both get in. Let me throw that out there. I think they both get in, but are you nervous at all that there's going to be conversation that neither Penn State nor Indiana has a key win? Illinois is not ranked anymore. They've lost 3 games.
No. I'd be more concerned if the SEC looked better than they have. I think they both have. I think the SEC, like everyone, has enough losses where, they're gonna only be seeded like 7 through 12 right now if you're not the conference champion. Which I think that really helps Penn State, Indiana. Like even if Indiana goes in, as long as they play competitively against Ohio State, I think they'll get a home game. Same with Penn State. So that's the 1 through 5 right now. Then this is the first time that the 2 polls are different. BYU's at 6 in the college football playoff rankings, and they're at 7 in the AP poll. And then if you flip that in the playoff rankings, Tennessee's 7, and then they're 6 in the AP poll. Do you think that's fair? How do you feel about that?
Sorry, Johnny, you got cut off there. What was the question?
So it's basically the playoff committee and the AP poll have 6 and 7 flipped, BYU and Tennessee. How do you feel about that?
BYU, I will never look a team in the face for winning all the games on their schedule. I think that is really, really important. That they obviously, but we're coming into a really uncomfortable situation with BYU. And hear me out, because if you look at the odds, you know me, I like odds, the Vegas odds.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Colorado and BYU are almost a pickup for the Big 12.
Yeah, no, that's really going to come down.
I think they're both like plus 160 or something like that. They're like toying it. And what happens, Johnny, and I know I'm jumping into something, but I can't get my head off this thought.
No, shoot.
BYU goes 10-0 and makes the Big 12 championship. They lose a really, really close game to Colorado, who has 2 losses on the year, or 3 losses on the year, 1 of the 2. We now have a team that loses the Big 12 in a very weak Big 12 year, and then we also have a team that wins it. Obviously, the team that wins it's in. BYU lost 1 game, and it was in the conference championship. I think they'd almost be better off losing a regular season game and not making the conference championship.
100%. I think BYU's in a really tough spot right now. I think there's a couple things to think about. If SMU wins the ACC, that's really going to help BYU, and I think SMU has a really good chance of winning the ACC.
That's a good point. So
So
I think that's a good point, Johnny. If they win the ACC, I think they're in both
because
1 or 2.
that's a win against a conference champion.
Yes.
But
Good point.
if they don't win that game, I think they're in some trouble, and it kind of depends how like Army Boise State shakes out. Because I think if Army goes undefeated, I think the SEC is going to really they're making a late season push to get 4 teams in just because of how even everyone is. And that's really going to affect like the Boise's, the Armies, the BYUs of the world. Because if BYU loses that conference championship game, they're in a lot of trouble because, I'm looking at what I wrote down. Like you got Bama, you got Georgia, you got A&M, you got LSU, Mizzou. I don't love those teams, but they're all sitting at like 2 conference losses right now. So like there's not enough spots right now. So I think they could be in some trouble. They got to win out. They got to win their conference championship to really control their destiny.
To kind of piggyback off that,
Yeah.
we have 5 teams that are likely to end 10-2 in the SEC.
Yeah.
You are going to be punished by playing in the SEC championship. And I'm not saying that you're not going to not get in, right? Like let's say Texas makes it and A&M makes it, right? Which is what everyone's believing, I think, what's on pace to play.
The only reason why I would push back a little bit is because they play each other the last game of the season. So one of them will lose. So I don't really know the tiebreakers as well as you probably do. But I
have them on my phone. They are a little bit complicated.
I can rip off the top 5 for you right now. We got Tennessee 5-1, A&M 5-1, Texas 4-1, Georgia 5-2, Ole Miss 4-2, Bama 4-2. So you got a lot there.
So it is choppy though. Like think about it. If they go 10-2 in the, let's say somehow, some way, it's Texas. I'm gonna just pick another team. I don't know the odds of this. Texas, Bama are in the SEC championship. Now we have Texas winning it. Bama now has 3 losses. Mizzou has 2. What are you gonna do? You can't punish the SEC runner-up for playing in the SEC championship. Someone's got to lose the game.
I think if 2 one-loss teams,
creates a really dangerous conversation of comparing losses, which I absolutely hate.
They're only in trouble if they have 3 losses. Like if 2 teams with 1 loss make the dance, like make the SEC championship game, whatever you want to call it, and they end the season with 2 losses, I think they're in. It's like where like A&M's in trouble because it's like you're in trouble if you have a non-conference loss right now, like A&M right now, like losing to Notre Dame early in the season. That's going to cost them.
You know what really irks me about that one though, and I'm back on I like Notre Dame. I think they are a national contender. If they
what a roller coaster! What a roller coaster!
I'm so up and down. I heard a point today from Josh Pate, my friend Josh Pate.
Personal.
And he said it, and I really, really liked it. And I would like to elaborate on it. He said
that go for it.
Why would A&M put themselves in this position moving forward where they played out-of-conference games such as Notre Dame when Notre Dame puts themselves out of conference. When I say out of conference, I mean a non-stereotypical NIU game, right? Northern Illinois. They lose, and they're not even going to get punished for it, right? They're going to make the playoffs. If they win out, they're going to make the playoffs. Texas A&M on the flip side plays a very, very tough game against Notre Dame, is going to get punished for that loss against Notre Dame, but Notre Dame on the flip side is not going to get punished for NIU. And it kind of irks me that you can go an entire season and have this huge blunder.
Yeah.
And still get into the playoff. I love the 12-team playoff, but, that is weird.
No, and that's why I have like a huge problem with Notre Dame. It's because like they get rewarded for not being in a conference, and they're in such like a rare position because we talk about the independents like Army. Well, no, Army's joined a conference. We talk about like a traditional independent doesn't have the reputation like a Notre Dame has, and they benefit off it. Like they can go lose a non-conference game to NIU, but since they have the Texas A&M win, they'll be fine. But then you have a team like A&M, they're playing in a gauntlet of an SEC this year, and they're going to get punished for that. And I just think it's hard to compare to Notre Dame because they're in such they've got the rich history and the rich background, and I think that really helps them.
It does. It almost seems like people baby Notre Dame.
They're a non-traditional independent almost, if that makes sense, because of their history. And I think they benefit off that a lot. Like you can complain all you want, like they can't get a top 4 seed, but I think that's fair because like A&M, they go out and play Notre Dame, then they go back and they're in conference schedule. Like they're sitting at 5-1 right now. They still have Auburn and Texas No, 5-1 in the SEC. They still have Auburn and Texas to end the season.
And then imagine trying to gear up your guys for an SEC championship when Notre Dame's got an extra 3.5 weeks off.
No, that's brutal. Absolutely brutal.
It is, and I obviously love Notre Dame. I think this is the best team that we've seen probably since 2020. Brian Kelly. I don't know. It's tough to say. I do think they're starting to really catch fire, but I get frustrated with the idea that they are not going to get it all punished. It seems like they are like in this weird hiatus, and other teams are just kind of going around them, like almost like a rock in a river type thing, where they're just hoping that teams continue to lose and continue to look worse and worse, and Notre Dame doesn't have to do anything more than beat Georgia Tech or Purdue, and they just keep climbing and climbing.
I do think that USC game at the end of the season is going to be a trap game. I know Army's still sitting there looking good right now, but I think USC, like, they've gone through so much tragedy this year. And, like, if you're Lincoln Riley, like, you're a great coach. I think you're convinced they got – No, not a great coach. No, not a great coach, but, a reputation. He's been to the playoff. How many coaches been to the playoff? I'm not going to say – you caught me there. Thanks for checking me there.
You're welcome. Because not to completely pivot here, he is 100% fired.
No, but I think – you're convincing the guys this is our Super Bowl. If we beat Notre Dame, we're playing spoiler right now. I think that's a bad spot for Notre Dame, a really great spot for USC.
Oh, absolutely.
And I wanted to ask you this quick tangent before we get back to the rankings. What are your thoughts on Riley Leonard right now? Because early in the season, you were down on him. The defense is there.
He can't throw the ball. And when I watch him play and watch what they're doing with him, it kind of reminds me of another quarterback who's in the Heisman comparisons. If you look at Riley Leonard's stats, Johnny, he is like up there with any other quarterback in terms of offensive production, in terms of total yards, touchdowns, first downs, things like that. He won't get into the Heisman conversation. It's just too late. He's thrown too many interceptions. He's made too many bad plays.
Yeah.
But dude ran for 4 touchdowns. He's run for that was last week. He's run for, I think, like 15 touchdowns this year. It's absolutely crazy the amount of touchdowns he's running for. Reminds you a lot of Jalen Milroe in ways. Right? Yeah. Jalen Milroe had like 260 yards total offense last week against LSU. 188 of them were on the ground.
Yeah.
I think that is a dangerous combo. And when you don't get wide receivers at Notre Dame, which they never do,
no,
you have to have a running and dynamic quarterback to where they have no idea what's going to happen. If it's 3rd and 6, if it's an RPO, it's 10 times more dangerous.
Yeah.
He is growing on me a little bit. I do think that offense has a lot to be desired for. Yeah. I do think that I think it's Steve Minchie is the backup. I'm a huge Steve Minchie guy. I think that he can throw the ball really, really well. He played in the bowl game against
last year.
Yeah, who did they have last year? It wasn't OK State.
Was it? It might have been.
That was 3 years ago. They had OK State. Let me see here.
I'm looking it up.
All right.
2023 bowl game. Oregon State.
State. Dude,
how could you forget about the 2023 Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl?
Is that when they were up 22-0 and just slowly withered it away?
No. I'm just saying Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Unbelievable.
That Notre Dame game was such a joke. But nonetheless, Steve Minchie threw for like 86% completion, 4 touchdowns. They like subbed him out. It was absolutely remarkable. But I do think that Notre Dame is a top-ranked team. I think they are one of the best teams in the nation. But I do think it has to be a conversation that if you're arguing, right, let's say Texas drops another one to A&M, or A&M drops one, or Alabama drops another one, or Ole Miss does. You have to have the conversation. Does Alabama's losses look better, like multiple losses look better than NIU? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Without a doubt in my mind. And, I'm going to go as far as say, like, Penn State, in Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Washington State. You have to have the conversation of, right, like they all played really, really hard years. And, Notre Dame's schedule, while this is one of the weaker ones I've ever seen, they have one key win, and the rest were absolute cakewalks, like absolute layups. And if you compare like pound for pound, the only thing they really got going for them is that Texas A&M win.
And that South Carolina loss to A&M really, really hurts them.
That hurts it even more. But like I'm just thinking in my head, like, teams that are one loss, that one loss trumps Notre Dame's one loss tenfold.
Yeah.
NIU has 5 losses on the year.
Yeah, no, that's bad. No, it's really bad. And that brings us to our next on the polls, both polls had Notre Dame at 8. And I think that's a fair spot right now.
Yeah,
I
I do
do.
too. I don't think that they should get any higher. At highest, I think they should be maybe 7. But I don't think that they could flip flop. I think the college football poll had them against Tennessee. That'd be a really fun matchup. I would actually take Notre Dame in that game. I think that Tennessee would really struggle offensively against Notre Dame. And that's the thing that Notre Dame's not getting enough credit for is how good their defense is.
And especially like Nico has looked really like a freshman in these big moments, which I think in the playoff, especially if they have to go play an away playoff game, will hurt them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so Notre Dame 8. Now in both polls, they've got the same 4 teams, 9 to 12, in 2 different orders. I'm just going to say them out of order to you, and I want you to rank them for me. We got Georgia, Ole Miss, Bama, Miami. How would you rank them? And then I'll tell you how the playoff committee ranked them and how the AP poll ranked them.
So I'm not going to – I feel like I'm going to piss some of our listeners off. I think that Georgia is a better team than Alabama. And everyone's going to be like, oh, Patch, like, Bama beat Georgia head up. They did, yes. They were also at home. They also won on a last play interception.
Yeah.
They also got outscored in the second half. What was it, 28-7?
Yeah.
I take things, and you and I have talked about this countless times. I take things with a grain of salt when a team can go out there and score 4 touchdowns in 4 possessions. Clearly, there is something the offense knows that the defense is not well equipped for, and they're going to capitalize on it. After that, Georgia outplayed Alabama so badly that I do think that they are a better team. Do I think that they're more deserving to be in a higher ranked? Probably not. But I think neutral field.
The only thing I'd push back on is just how poorly Carson Beck has played the past couple weeks.
He seems to be getting worse, which is concerning. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, after the Texas win, I was like, that team is going to be unstoppable for the rest of the year. Right? Like, they just lit a bunch of campfire logs right under their bums. Like, they're gonna take off. And then they didn't. And I don't really know what's going on. Their inconsistency is not like a Kirby team that I've seen in my lifetime. I've never seen a high caliber football team play as inconsistent as Georgia has.
I don't get, and I think last year Carson Beck really benefited off of like Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, studs at running back. He had all these guys around him. But I thought like another year for him would be like, maybe I don't have the grade A talent around me, but I'm another year older. I've got the experience, and I'm going to take off this year and make up for the lack of talent. But he just really hasn't.
Yeah, no, but I do think that Georgia would be a dangerous team if they got in the playoffs, right? We talked a little bit about how they have the hardest schedule in college football.
Well, it's crazy.
3 out of their toughest 5 games were on the road, or 3 out of 4 were on the road.
They've had 4 top 10 games and 3 of them on the road.
That's just absolutely crazy. And they, won 1, lost 2.
The only thing about how big these conferences are getting is it's a travesty that they're 5-2 in the SEC and they've played all those teams we just said. And then Mizzou's 3-2 in the SEC. And they played like no one, and they're like even in the SEC rankings right now.
Yeah. And that
comes out me those teams are equal.
No, and I don't think anyone, if you had it on paper, I think some people would say, yeah, technically they are, but I don't think anyone would actually truly mean that. So I just want to list this out there. On August 21st, 2024, the SEC announced what their conference championship tiebreakers were.
Let's hear it.
In order, we have A through F. We have 6 steps here. A is head-to-head competition among the tie teams. So they would look at and say, all right, Bama beat Georgia.
I like that.
The one up.
I know you just said you might not love that. You don't love that. You think Georgia?
What I was saying was more power rankings rather than who's deserving in the actual standings in the bracket.
But as a tiebreaker, I like that. That makes sense.
You got to as a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Where I think it gets really, really choppy, Johnny, is when you're in opposite conferences.
Yeah.
I get
that.
Let's say hypothetically Notre Dame had the craziest hard year, right? And head to head they lose to A&M, right? Let's say they lose to A&M this year, but they beat teams like Clemson, they beat teams like BYU, because they play BYU year in and year out. Like they go and beat K-State for some weird reason. And I'm just listing stuff off, but then Texas A&M gets the type of schedule that Mizzou has. And then you say, oh, but Texas A&M beat Notre Dame in this hypothetical world. That's where I would tend to kick back a little bit. It's like, yes, they did beat them, but look at their strength of schedule, right? The season's 3 months for a reason. It's not one game.
No way.
And that's kind of where I kick back. So then we have, if you cannot decide based on A, number letter B, number 2, record versus all common conference opponents among the tie teams. So then they would look at your SEC win losses.
Is it like wait, say that again. Does that mean like opponents? Like, say we both play Alabama.
I assume so, right? Record versus all common conference opponents.
Yeah. So it's like
teams.
Like, say we both played Alabama, you and me. Did I beat Alabama? Did you beat Alabama? Did I beat
Gotcha.
Tennessee? Did you beat Tennessee? Because we're not all going to play all the same conference opponents, so it's our record versus your record, the same.
That's fair.
Okay,
that makes more sense. Letter C, record against highest, best placed common conference opponent in the conference standings and proceedings through the conference standings among the tied teams. So now this is getting super choppy. So now they're saying, who had out of your win-loss record, what is who did you beat? Who did you not beat? I think, which is kind of the same thing as letter B.
Yeah, no, it gets kind of choppy. But
letter D, cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents among the tie teams. That one I really like. That one I really, really like. Because
what are the odds?
How good are the SEC teams that you're playing?
What are the odds we get to D? Like, you know what I mean?
I certainly doubt it. I think it dies at B, if I had to be honest. But
so that being said, we've got Miami, Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia. How would you rank these teams? I know. So you already put Georgia.
Johnny, I got to get to letter F because it's absolutely crazy if this happened.
Okay, go for it.
All right. Letter E. Letter E. Capped relative total scoring margin versus all conference opponents among tie teams. So how much did you win by?
Okay.
Letter F. Random draw.
That's unbelievable.
Isn't that crazy, dude? That's like Friday Night Lights, coin flip type thing.
I know, but what are the odds your point differential's the same? This should be like Bizarro World.
Yeah, you're talking 10 zeros and then a 1 type percentage.
But these are all things to think about because those 4 teams I just said to you are the 4 last teams that would make this playoff. And 3 of them are in the same conference. So Miami, Ole Miss, Georgia, Bama. How would you rank those?
Miss, Bama,
Georgia, Miami.
Georgia. So if I had to rank them in terms of power ranking, are you saying if all 4 are making the playoffs, how are you going about this?
Well, it's kind of the same because these would be all like at large bids. You know what I mean?
I would have to go Bama. Got it.
I thought you just said Georgia over
LSU.
Yeah, true.
I know I'm really contradicting myself, but at the same time, this is how choppy it is. I don't even know how I feel. But the more I reflect on it, you have to respect the fact that they beat LSU at nighttime, smoked them.
And we'll talk about it later, but boy, did they beat.
Yeah, they beat the brakes off them. That game was embarrassing. That game was crazy. I shut it off, I think, after the second quarter. Then they beat Georgia. Key win. Obviously, they lose to Vanderbilt. Obviously, they lose to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Then I'd go Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Miami. I don't think Miami is a good team. I think that Georgia versus Miami, Georgia's a 9-point favorite type thing. I obviously give Ole Miss the one up on Georgia because they just beat them. I don't think the space between Bama and Ole Miss is as big as people may think.
No way. I agree with you on that. But
the only reason I'm giving Bama the head up on Ole Miss is Ole Miss lost to LSU.
Yeah, and the crazy they shouldn't have lost to LSU too. That was an insane end of that game. But the crazy thing is, I totally agree with you with Miami at 12 there. But in the way this playoff is going to work,
they're 4.
They get the 4 seed, which is
crazy? So they'll come out and be like, "Yeah, you are the 12th ranked team, but in the bracket you are ranked 4th."
Yeah, just because of the promises they made to each conference.
That's stupid.
No, it's really dumb. It's really dumb.
The top 4 teams are the SEC, then they should be the top 4 ranked teams.
But it's all money when it comes down to it. It's like when all these conferences got to the bargaining table with the playoff committee, they were like, well, we need a guaranteed person in and we need a guaranteed buy and stuff like that. And that's why these things were determined. But still, that is crazy. If Miami's the 12th ranked team, they're going to get the 4 seed in a buy. It's wild.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. I would almost rather have Boise State get that 4 spot.
Yeah.
I don't think Miami's the shoe-in to win the ACC. Are they even still the favorite, Johnny?
No, well, they're not number 1 in the conference standings right now. SMU is undefeated in the ACC.
Yeah, that's crazy. SMU's only loss was to BYU. Was it a close game?
3 points is 18-15.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I'm
No.
pulling it up. Conference winner. The SEC has Texas is plus 110, then Bama's plus 350. A Bama Texas conference championship would be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that'd be a great game.
So then
AC,
we have Oregon, Ohio State is practically a pick 'em.
yep.
Oh wow, Miami is still the favorite. They're plus 125, but SMU is plus 190, and then Clemson's plus 250 right behind them.
Yeah, no, Clemson has a tough one against Pitt. SMU has BC, Cal, and UVA, which they should be fine with. And then Miami has Wake Forest and Syracuse. So that's
Syracuse could give them a little bit of a run.
no, I agree because Kyle McCord's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like some days he looks like he's gonna light the world on fire, and some days he's like, I'm gonna throw like 4 picks. So like
Do you
who
see our
knows?
boy Bill O'Brien bench Castellanos and he announced he's transferring?
Yeah, it's tough. At one point in time,
Soft.
he was like the future. Like, you know what I mean? Like
It's crazy. He started out so high, beating FSU, and everyone's like, "Holy cow, this team is really, really good." And
he just can't really throw the ball, which is tough. He was
Right.
so dynamic in the run game, but like teams eventually were like, "Hey, we're just going to take away the run, make him beat us throwing the ball."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, put 11 guys in the box.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, I'll cap this at 15 because after that it gets kind of crazy. But both polls had the same 13 to 15, Boise, then SMU, and then A&M. And my big thing was I think SMU is getting severely disrespected, especially if both polls are going to rank BYU at either 6 or 7. Like if they're going to rank those two teams that high, then SMU is a 3-point loss to them. And them not even being in the playoff, like we're even one away from the playoff is kind of crazy. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that is a team. I think a lot of wrenches are going to get thrown in the playoffs in the next 4
yeah,
weeks, and I think it's going to get like really ugly when because Colorado has 2 losses, right? They lost to Nebraska, they lost to K State.
yeah,
Like Colorado wins the Big 12, right? They're a 2-loss champion in the in the playoff, which is crazy. Then we have the possibility of SMU, a 1-loss team, lost to BYU, like we talked about, is
yeah.
out of the ACC championship, or Miami is, and they lose to Georgia Tech, or like what happens if 1 loss? I don't know. It can get really, really ugly. I do think that SMU is in a really good position to make the playoff. I don't think that they have anything really to worry about in the ACC. And I would
Mhm.
go as far as to say if they play Miami really, really well, that they should possibly get in if
It's
BYU goes undefeated.
it's tricky what SMU and Miami right now, like say that's the conference championship game. It's really tricky because we've been saying it all year. Like if Miami gets SMU in a shootout, Miami's winning that game all day. But Georgia Tech did a really good job of just limiting X plays and holding
Yeah.
Miami on 3rd down. And like in a dogfight, I just don't trust that defense, and I don't trust
Nope.
how explosive that offense can be. It's like boom or bust, where like I really don't know about Miami. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that, Georgia Tech has their playbook in their back pocket. I think that that's a team, once they played a team with a decent defense and a little bit of fire, they were going to get exposed. Everyone knew that. This team seems like all smoke and mirrors to me. Where
Yeah,
they played an Ole Miss, it'd be 14 to 17 point game. If they played a Ohio State, it'd be a 25-point game. Where
yeah.
they're only going to get in because they have the easiest schedule on earth. And I love the fact that Miami's getting all this love for how easy of a schedule they have. Oh, they're such a good team. They have such a good offense. Indiana's putting up very similar numbers with a very similar schedule, if not harder schedule. And the disrespect that they're getting, saying they haven't played anyone in the top 25. Who's
No,
Miami
it's
played?
crazy. It's crazy how high Miami was before this loss because they had just been playing with fire. They're like a BYU team where like just addicted to these close
Yeah.
games, and finally they get burned. Whereas like
Like,
Indiana's beating the hell
yeah,
out of
it's just wild, Johnny, because like, yes, Miami was beating teams 65 to 35. They're still letting up 35 points to Duke.
yeah, no,
You can't
unacceptable.
forget that. Like that's
No,
absolutely ugly. To I do want to talk a little bit about a couple of games, Johnny, and just kind of
yeah,
see what you felt, after them. Let's start with the big one.
yeah,
I want to get this one out there. Bama goes into LSU, goes into Baton Rouge, Tiger Stadium, and it's not even a game. That team at LSU played so freaking bad. And it was one of those losses where I said, oh, in my head, right? Yes, I did bet LSU. But in my head, I said, oh, if LSU didn't make this mistake, it'd be a different game. If they didn't make that mistake, it'd be a different game. Oh, if they played in better weather, it'd be a different game. They weren't even the same style football in the
no.
sense that they weren't even like the same division at that point.
No, this game really made me question my ability to talk about college football because I was like, this whole year I've been so high on Nussmeier, Nussmeier, Nussmeier. I thought he was, he's going to have a long NFL career, just his ability to push it downfield, his ability to make good decisions. And man, have I been wrong. Man, like I don't know, like that offense, like they were just confused all night. And then I don't get Brian Kelly because it's 2 times this year they've been so burned by dual threat quarterbacks. And it's like you go get burned by Marcel Reed against Texas A&M. It's like, what does Jalen Milroe do?
Oh,
He's
you're forgetting about South Carolina.
South Carolina too.
Lenore Snead, is it?
Yeah, you're
Absolutely
right.
dominated them, and they should have won that game. They got screwed.
No, yeah, no, you're right. Totally right. But I'm just saying, like, we've seen this story before, and I thought maybe Brian Kelly, I don't know, would change things up, but no, they got torched by Milroe
I
all
just
night
don't
long.
understand, how does a team like LSU, led by Brian Kelly, right? Brian Kelly's MO at Notre Dame was defense, home win percentage, and like tough, gritty wins.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any of that at LSU,
No.
and I don't understand, because like while he was at Notre Dame, the only game, I think it was from like 2016 to 2021 ish. The only team he lost to was Cincinnati at home,
Yeah.
and that was the year Cincinnati made the playoff. And I'm thinking to myself, like, they don't have that home record. It's understandable, right? Like the SEC, you play harder games at home. You're going to drop some, right? You're changing the culture, blah, blah, blah. But like, he never struggled against the run pass option or the running quarterback at Notre Dame. You have better athletes, better resources. Like, I guess I don't understand.
And the thing about Brian Kelly's tenure at LSU is if he never won that game against Saban, 2 or 3 years ago in Baton Rouge, what would we be saying about his time at LSU?
People would be saying the same thing they said about Billy Napier.
Yeah, no, and just because he had that signature win, people are like, well, he's building something. I don't think he is anymore.
No.
Because he had the quarterback this year. He had the defense. You'll always be able to recruit good running backs and receivers at LSU. And still, like, look at last year. They had Neighbors and the guy that's on the Jaguars, Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
And still wasn't able to do it. It's like, I don't know.
What is it going to take? Like, you're never going to get an all-star studded cast like 2019 LSU again.
That's a flashy plan.
Because, like, I was expecting a 35-31 game. Alabama gets, a touchdown with 11 seconds left.
Yeah.
Dude, it wasn't even like remotely close. And what I always keep coming back to is LSU gets a massive stop. The whole stadium goes crazy. 4th and 1, they stop the run. It's a beautiful play. Next play, Garrett Nussmeier immediately bails on his 5-step drop, runs left, fumbles the ball, turnover. They score 3 plays later.
Over.
A defense cannot do that. And I don't understand for the life of me is like, you're coming off a bye week. You are a very veteran coach.
Yeah.
Right? A running quarterback is not a new concept.
No, especially in college football.
Hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Like, you've played Jalen Milroe before.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind. I did not think that it was a 2-point game. Alabama was a 2-point favorite, and they won by 27 points?
Yeah, gross. I don't know. And I think that was the first playoff game we've seen this year. And I think LSU's out. Bama just absolutely sprung themselves into the
I'm trying not to buy too much into Bama. I'm going to go with LSU played a worse game than Bama played a good game.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But I'm just saying Bama just, especially because Kalen DeBoer had been killed by those boosters all year. He needed.
He needs to win a playoff game to kind of shut everyone up just a little bit. The next game, there's some that I'm going to kind of skip over here a little bit. Florida, Texas had nothing special besides Quinn Ewers' 375 yards, 4 touchdowns. He played a really, really good game.
Yeah.
Florida looked absolutely terrible. Obviously, their quarterback, DJ Lagway, did not play. It's kind of an embarrassing game to play 3 days after getting an extension.
It kind of struck me as a game where Florida just threw the kitchen sink at Georgia and almost beat them, and then they just kind of DJ Lagway couldn't play, and they just kind of came out flat.
Yeah, there's not really much more on that. Texas played a really, really good game. Florida's a decent team. Texas kind of dominated from start to finish. I don't know what to make of Texas. I still have this absolute you remember those candies? They were called like toxic waste.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
little yellow package.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how bad the Georgia-Texas game made me feel about Texas, that it is going to take a lot for me to get back on that Texas train.
No, them at 3 is kind of crazy because they looked so bad, flipping back and forth between Quinn and Arch Manning like that. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole right now because I just
No,
don't.
no, I would not. I would not either. Like it is not something that I would want to bet. I think the only thing that's going to make me feel good about them is a really good performance in the SEC championship against a good team.
Or against A&M, they need to beat up on A&M.
Oh, they got to beat up an A&M,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see. If they dominate A&M, I will be very excited because I think Texas could be a front runner for the Natty.
Yeah.
But a team that we vouched we would never talk about again has kind of made its way back into a national presence. Who?
Colorado.
The Buffaloes.
They refuse.
Here comes Ralphie.
They refuse to stay out of the light right now. You know what I mean? Like they just keep
played really well against Texas Tech.
And against a Texas Tech team that's played good football the past couple weeks. Their schedule when it comes just to the Big 12 down the stretch is Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State they're going to beat. Utah, I think, is in the same kind of deal as that Georgia-Florida game where I think Florida threw everything at Georgia. I think Utah threw everything at BYU. That's the holy war between Mormons and Utah. I think they used everything there. You heard their AD come out after the game and talk.
Yeah.
I don't think Utah is showing up this week. But Kansas
– I would agree. Yeah, Kansas is kind of finding their limelight right now. I think that they have the chance to – they're a, 2.5-point underdog against – who are they an underdog against?
Kansas?
Against BYU.
BYU.
So they have a chance to really mess up the Big 12. If BYU drops this one, it's Colorado's to win it. I'm not sure what Kansas State has to do to get into the Big 12 championship. Do you know off the top of your head? I feel like they're not all that eliminated. They have one loss in the Big 12.
So I'll read it out right now. So Big 12 right now, just conference schedules. BYU 6-0, Colorado 5-1, Iowa State 4-2, K-State 4-2, ASU 4-2, West Virginia 4-2.
Who has K-State lost to in conference? They lost to BYU and they lost to Arizona State, right? Or Arizona?
Yes. So we got BYU sitting at the top. They've got Kansas, ASU, and Houston. Colorado, it's got Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and then Kansas State's got No. Kansas State still has ASU. I'll look up the schedule right now.
Yeah, that's interesting because I thought K-State was still kind of I think they're third in the ranking, third in the Vegas odds to make the playoffs. I think they got to win out, and then someone else has got to lose to get into the conference championship.
They lost to Houston last week.
Oh yeah, oof.
That was a bad one.
Oof.
Yeah, no, I think it's looking like BYU Colorado in that conference championship game, but I do think I couldn't tell you right now which team it will be, but I do think Kansas beats either BYU or Colorado. I think they get one of those. I think they're playing really great football right now. I think Leipold's a really great coach. They had a really poor start to the season, but I think they play good enough football.
I think they beat BYU. I don't think they beat Colorado.
Yeah, but then if they do that, it's still going to be Colorado BYU because everyone else has 2 losses.
Yeah. Going on to Georgia Ole Miss, we talked a little bit about how bad Georgia played. Are you giving Ole Miss any credit? Their front 7 looked really, really good on defense.
Disgusting, and that's been the knock against Lane Kiffin the past couple of years has been the defense. Like they've gotten these great offenses, scored a lot of points. The quarterback's always there, but they haven't been able to, stay in these games defensively. And, they went out, they got Walter Nolan in the transfer portal. I think he was like a number 1 recruit a couple of years ago, went to A&M, that legendary A&M recruiting class, and then ended up at Ole Miss. They really bulked up that D-line, and they're vicious up front.
They are. They're a scary team up front. Georgia can't run the ball, but they do have a good offensive line, and they just got absolutely dominated. Carson Beck couldn't do anything.
If you watch that game, though, the first 5 minutes, I thought Georgia was going to kill Ole Miss because they get the pick. Jackson Dart goes down. Then I'm pretty sure Georgia went down and scored. And I was like, okay, Georgia's just going to mop them.
Well,
then after that,
they had a really good team last year, and Georgia wiped the floor with them by 45 points.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't know what happened to Carson Beck, but he just turned into a pumpkin, and he's just turning the ball over. They can't extend drives. The defense is playing the entire game out there, and you got to give a lot of credit to Ole Miss because they came out there and the defense was swarming. They played great football, and then Jackson Dart, went down, came back in, and just did enough, even running the ball.
Do they have a chance to make the SEC championship, Johnny?
Ole
Obviously,
Miss,
they have a chance, but is it
4-2,
possible?
4-2 right now, and they got Florida, Mississippi State the rest of the way. Who they're going to beat both those teams probably, and then the only teams with one losses are A&M and Texas who play each other, and Tennessee who plays Georgia. So they very well. It's going to be
so they need Georgia to beat Tennessee. They need to win out, and they need Texas to beat
A&M,
and then I think it's between them and Bama.
And Tennessee plays Vandy last game of the season, which is going to be, interstate rivalry. That's going to be a gritty game. You can never count Diego Pavia out. So that's going to be a good game. So I don't know.
That is going to be interesting.
I really just couldn't tell you who's going to make the SEC championship game.
No, it's so complicated. Now that they got rid of the East and the West, it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
To go on to this week's games, we have 5 picks. Kind of a slow week in college football. I'm okay with it. A little bit of rebound heading into our Thanksgiving series a little bit. I know Thanksgiving's obviously not next week, but we're heading down into those Michigan, Ohio State games, those in-state conference games, the Iron Bowl, stuff like that. We have Utah versus Colorado at Colorado. Colorado's an 11.5-point favorite. We have LSU coming off a disgusting loss going to Florida. They're a 4.5-point favorite. Mizzou is at South Carolina, 12.5-point favorite. Right after Eli Drinkwitz said they're still in the playoff run, which is interesting because he's got to lay off the marijuana if that's the case. We have Tennessee's at Georgia. Georgia's a minus 10-point favorite. We have BYU is a minus 2.5-point favorite versus Kansas. The one that catches my eye the most, there's a couple of, I know I only listed 5, but this kind of screams an underdog week.
It really does. It really and there's so many points.
Like if Nico plays, 10 points seems crazy to me.
I hate this board right now.
Me too.
It's so many points, except for that BYU game where like Tennessee, South Carolina, Utah, all those games is so many points that what does Vegas know right now? It's kind of scaring me.
Yeah, no, especially since I've seen them. I thought South Carolina opened up at -9, and Tennessee, Georgia opened up at -8. So they've already moved a decent chunk. To start, Utah versus Colorado. I think Colorado wins the game. I do think that Utah can keep it kind of close. I think 11.5 is just too much. I think it's a 10-point game through and through. I'm going to go with Utah on that one, Johnny.
Yeah, no, I hate what I'm going to say, but I'm going to go with Colorado just because I think Utah really threw everything they had at BYU. I think that was their Super Bowl, and I don't know how they're going to bounce back. So
yeah, I think it's tough, but I can't imagine that Kyle Whittingham, with his experience, can let them stay down after a loss like that.
He's a great coach. I respect that.
I think it's close.
I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. I respect
I do too. I wish he would be able to find a quarterback and some offensive production, and
Yeah.
it would be really, really good there. Ultra disappointing this year. We have LSU minus 4.5 against Florida. I'm going to pick Florida. I think that they actually get an upset here. I'm not picking this as my cheesecake pick of the week, but LSU's coming off a tough loss. Coming from that environment to head to Gainesville, a team that does dislike them. And, Billy Napier's got to get that signature win of the year. I think this is it.
Is Lagway playing? Do you know?
I think still up in the air.
Okay, then I'm going to pick LSU. I think LSU bounces back. I think they're better against inferior opponents, and I think
they are. Brian Kelly does do well with that.
That's what I'm saying. I think he beats teams. I think he beats teams he should, and I think they'll win by a touchdown.
We have Mizzou heading towards South Carolina. South Carolina has got to be kicking themselves for their loss to Bama. Their loss to
they're a good team.
Losses. They've lost to Bama. They lost to LSU. They lost to Georgia State. It was a terrible.
No, that was Vandy. I'll look it up right now. You keep talking.
I'm gonna go crazy and say, if South Carolina just doesn't lose that shitty one and then splits so LSU, Bama, they could be in the conversation to be in the playoff race.
They beat the doors off Kentucky, but then they lost by 3 to LSU. Yeah. They got smoked by Ole Miss, and then they lost by 2 to Bama. This is a good team. We talked about Ole Miss really having a great front seven. USC has a great front seven in South Carolina.
They do, and they what's crazy is they should have beat Bama. It was a terrible play call on the 2-point conversion, and they got a terrible referees call against LSU. And realistically, they should have one loss against Ole Miss.
Yeah, no,
Imagine that, Johnny, South Carolina with one loss.
they're a vicious team to play.
I think they absolutely dominate Mizzou. I think they beat them very similar to what Bama did. I'm expecting like a 35-7, 35-10 type game. I think 12.5 is too low.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm riding with you on that one.
We have Tennessee versus Georgia. I'm going to go out on a limb. I do not know if Nico's playing. I don't think that Georgia's playing good enough football. They're so unpredictable. I would never bet this money, even if you gave me a free bet voucher. I'm going to pick Tennessee plus 10. I just think that's so many points for a team that is fighting for an SEC championship.
Yeah.
They know what's at stake. They know that they are, this win away from making the SEC championship. I'd be surprised if they ever let it get more than 7.
Is this your cheesecake pick or no?
No. Mine's a little out of the blue, but I do think.
Okay. I'm gonna ride with you. I think Georgia wins, but I think 10's a lot. I think 10's too much. It's gonna really come down to if Nico plays, but
that defense is good for Tennessee, and they're going to stop the run. They're not going to get the ball thrown over their head. I don't see how Georgia hangs so many points on them.
No, I think they cover. I think they lose but cover.
Yeah. Finally, we have BYU minus 2.5 against Kansas. I've already explained. I think that Kansas is a good team. I think that BYU, in the same sense of what Miami is just 1 or 2 plays away from dropping their one game of the year. I'm going to go with 2.5. I would not pick this game to win if I was going to pick it as my Cheesecake Factory. I think it could squeak away a 19-18, a 21-20 type overtime win for BYU. But I do think that Kansas covers this game.
I'm taking BYU. I think they're lucky. They've got a rabbit's foot or something, a horseshoe. Yeah. They just win these close games,
That's experience, and not experience. That's maturity. I read that the average age on the BYU football team is 22 or 23 years old.
Yeah, I think that's,
there's a certain level of maturity that comes with that type of age difference.
I'm not going to go out on a limb and say I know a lot about Mormon culture, but I think a lot of these guys, it's my sister's boyfriend's a big wrestling guy, and he used to tell me like a bunch of these Mormon guys go on these like mission trips, come back, and they play older. So, I think that's kind of a
staying calm and collected in those fourth quarter battles, it will pay off.
And I think they have something. I think they have something to play for, and I don't think Kansas does. So I
don't think so either. I think but I do think that Kansas can surprise BYU. I know BYU is going to lay an egg eventually. Make the college football selection show just a little bit easier. We cannot have a replay of last year where people were protesting the college football playoffs and so on and so on. Yeah. My pick for this week, a team that just fired their offensive coordinator, hired someone within. They're kind of in shambles. I think they're a wounded dog who needs to eat. I'm going to go with Nebraska plus 8 against USC.
I had that down. They got Dana, right? Holgerson to call.
Yeah, where's he from? That name sounds so familiar.
No, he was the head coach at Houston for a while.
Oh.
Yeah. No, he's been around the block. I think he's a good coach.
I agree. I think Matt Rule is, people are really saying that he's underperformed this year, and I don't disagree. They don't have the offensive production that they thought. I wouldn't be surprised if this OC, Dana Holgerson, threw everything at USC. Yeah. Their defense is still stout. There's no doubt about that. No, USC is unraveling. 8 points is way too much. I think we could squeak away with a 3-point win.
Okay, I'm going to go with Cuse over Cal. It's 8.5. It's at Cal. I think Cuse can score the ball. I really don't think Cal is. Cal's kind of MO this season's winning these close, losing these really close ACC games. But I still like Kyle McCord. I know a couple games he turns into a pumpkin, but I think he's a good quarterback. I also think Fran Brown's a psycho. Him coming out in the media and saying soap is for winners. He doesn't wash himself after a game. Kind of an insane take, but that's a football guy. So
you gotta respect the people.
Oh yeah.
After losses, I almost respect them more than people who shower after wins. They don't wash the win off. It's like, no, you smell. Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't disagree. I think that's a really good pick. I think Kyle McCord has some really good talent. I think he can make a really good backup quarterback or make a good run at the high-ranking quarterbacks going into next year's draft.
For sure.
That is a good pick. So we have 5 games to really look forward to. A selection show next week. We have a lot to look forward to. As the year comes down to it, we have the Big 10 race is tight, Big 12 race is tight, SEC race is probably the tightest we've ever seen.
Yeah, no.
Lots to look forward to in the month of November, Johnny.
The SEC, ACC, and Big 12, it's going to be just appointment television watching these games because it's going to be every game is going to really matter. I'm very excited.
Me too. And we'll talk more next week, Johnny.
Okay, see ya.